The rain fell with a soft, musical rhythm, tapping against the rusted tin roof of a small auto repair shop at the far edge of a sleepy town. Inside, a man named Malik, a mechanic in his early 30s, worked steadily beneath the hood of an old, battered pickup truck. Please like and subscribe to my channel for more of this. His hands, stained with oil, moved with careful precision. Malik paused only to wipe the sweat from his brow with the back of his sleeve. He didn't know it yet, but his life was about to change forever. Malik's garage, a gift left to him by his late father, was nothing fancy. It barely brought in enough money to pay for bills, groceries, and the odd repair to the shop itself. Still, Malik considered himself rich in something more valuable than gold: kindness. If a customer couldn't pay, he often fixed their cars for free. He shared his modest lunches with the homeless and greeted every stranger with a warm smile, even when life had every reason to make him frown. On that rainy afternoon, Malik happened to glance up through the open garage doors. Across the street, by the old wooden bus stop, he spotted someone standing alone. It was a young woman, soaked from head to toe, clutching a small, worn suitcase. Her white dress clung to her, muddy and torn, a heavy reminder of something she clearly wanted to forget. Malik's heart twisted at the sight. Without a word, he set down his wrench and stepped out into the pouring rain. He approached her slowly, careful not to frighten her. "Miss, you look like you could use some shelter," Malik said gently. The woman looked up, mascara streaked down her cheeks, like rivers of sorrow. She hesitated, then nodded. Malik offered his hand, and she let him guide her into the garage. He handed her a clean towel and pointed to the only seat available, a cushioned stool near the coffee-stained workbench. "Thank you," she whispered, her voice cracked and fragile. She clutched the towel tightly as if it was her last anchor. After a few moments, she found the strength to speak again. "My name is Liana," she said. Her words trembled, heavy with unspoken pain. Malik didn't rush her. He simply nodded and listened as she told her story, how she had been left at the altar, abandoned by the man she loved just an hour before their wedding was to begin. Liana's voice quivered as she spoke, each word cutting deeper than the last. "He said he couldn't build a life with someone like me," she whispered. Malik stayed silent, offering her the comfort of his presence. Liana's hands twisted the towel nervously. "I trusted him. I told him everything about my past, my scars, and he used them to walk away." Malik crouched near her, resting one arm casually across his knee. "I'm sorry," he said quietly, meaning it with his whole heart. Liana's story spilled out in broken pieces. Her parents, embarrassed and furious, had blamed her for the failed wedding. "You're too damaged to love," her mother had hissed before disappearing into the rain. With nowhere to turn and no one waiting for her, Liana had wandered the streets aimlessly until the storm pushed her to the old bus stop. Listening, Malik clenched his jaw, fighting the anger he felt on her behalf. "You're safe now," he said firmly. And for the first time that day, Liana allowed herself to believe it. That night, Malik did what came naturally to him. He showed kindness without fanfare. He cooked a simple meal of lentils and rice, apologizing for how plain it was. Liana shook her head, tears in her eyes, as she accepted the warm plate. When it was time to rest, Malik insisted she take his small, lumpy bed in the back room. He made himself comfortable on the cold garage floor with an old blanket, waving off her protests. "You need it more than I do," he said with a small smile. The next morning, the rain had slowed to a mist, and sunlight fought to break through the clouds. Malik found Liana sweeping the garage floor with a broom almost twice her size. He chuckled softly. "You don't have to do that, you know," he said. Liana looked up a little embarrassed. "I want to," she replied. "You've done enough for me already." From that day on, she helped around the shop, sweeping floors, organizing tools, even fetching coffee from the diner nearby. It didn't take long for laughter to return to Liana's voice. She teased Malik about his messy toolbox and shook her head fondly at his habit of talking to old cars like they were old friends. Malik, for his part, never treated Liana like a broken thing. He saw something different, a strength she didn't yet recognize in herself. Slowly, without either of them realizing, their days began to weave together, thread by golden thread. One afternoon, Malik wiped his hands on a rag and leaned against the doorway, watching Liana laugh over a crooked shelf she was trying to fix. "You're good for this place," he said casually. She blushed, brushing a loose strand of hair behind her ear. "Maybe it's the place that's good for me," she replied. Malik smiled but said nothing. He didn't want to rush anything. He just wanted her to heal. Weeks passed. Liana decided it was time to rebuild her life properly. Malik encouraged her to apply for a job at the little bookstore 3 blocks down. She hesitated at first, but he smiled and said, "You're stronger than you think." When she landed the job, she came running into the garage with the news, laughing and out of breath. Malik swept her into a congratulatory hug, careful and brief, but full of genuine pride. With her first paycheck, Liana bought small gifts for the garage, a bright blue curtain for the dusty window, a second-hand couch she found at a thrift store so Malik wouldn't have to sleep on the floor anymore. She teased him about the old blanket he had been using. "You deserve better," she said firmly. Malik laughed, accepting her gifts with a sheepish gratitude that made her heart swell. Their lives intertwined more naturally than either expected. They shared dinners on the rooftop, watching sunsets bleed across the sky. They joked about opening a diner attached to the garage one day, and though no promises were spoken, something real and unshakable was growing between them. Respect, trust, and a quiet, budding love neither dared name just yet. One evening, sitting side by side on the rooftop, Liana turned to Malik, her voice soft. "Why have you been so kind to me?" Malik didn't answer right away. He leaned back, resting his hands behind his head, and looked up at the first stars peeking through the fading twilight. "Because someone once believed in me when I had nothing," he said, "and it changed my whole life." Liana listened, her chest tightening with emotion. "Who believed in you?" she asked gently. Malik smiled faintly, as if remembering something sacred. "My mother," he said. "She once took in a homeless boy one winter, gave him a place to stay, and helped him finish school. Years later, that boy became a doctor. When my mother got sick, it was that same boy who saved her life." He glanced at Liana, his eyes warm. You never know what a little kindness can grow into. For a long moment, neither of them spoke. The only sounds were the crickets chirping and the distant hum of a passing truck. Finally, Liana whispered, "You make it sound so simple." Malik shrugged. "Maybe it is simple. Hard, but simple." Liana smiled, a real smile this time, not a forced one. She tucked her knees to her chest and leaned her head lightly against Malik's shoulder. He froze for a heartbeat, then relaxed, letting her stay. The months rolled by quietly but beautifully. Malik's garage became busier than ever. Word spread about the kind-hearted mechanic who always gave honest prices, never overcharged, and sometimes fixed cars just because someone truly needed help. Customers became friends. Friends became regular visitors. Even Liana's boss from the bookstore started bringing her beat-up old car for repairs, insisting Malik was a miracle worker. Liana flourished, too. She grew more confident each day, her laugh echoing across the small garage as she told stories about quirky customers or recommended new books for Malik to read. One evening, Malik showed up at the bookstore during her shift, awkwardly holding a paperback she had once mentioned. "Thought you might want to read it together," he said, cheeks pink with shyness. Liana's heart felt too big for her chest. Their lives weren't perfect, but they were real. Some nights were harder than others. Bills stacked up. Malik's old truck broke down twice in 1 week. Liana's hours at the bookstore were sometimes cut, but somehow sharing the weight made it lighter. Malik often said with a grin, "We're like duct tape and rusty bolts. Nothing fancy, but we hold strong." and Liana would laugh, her eyes shining. On a chilly evening, after fixing a stubborn carburetor all day, Malik and Liana sat together in the garage, sipping hot cocoa from mismatched mugs. Liana toyed with her mug before speaking. "Do you ever think about the future?" Malik raised an eyebrow. "All the time," he said. "You?" Liana nodded slowly. "I used to be scared of it, but now, I think I'm starting to hope again." Malik set his mug down and turned to face her fully. "You should hope," he said. "You've got a fire inside you, Liana. You just needed a place where it could burn without getting snuffed out." His words wrapped around her like a blanket, warming places inside her she thought had gone cold forever. She blinked quickly, trying not to cry, and whispered, "Thank you, Malik, for everything." Spring arrived with the smell of fresh rain and wildflowers blooming along the sidewalks. The anniversary of the day Malik found Liana standing at the bus stop approached. Neither of them mentioned it aloud, but both felt the weight of it in their hearts. Malik became a little quieter, more thoughtful. Liana caught him staring at her more often, his eyes full of something he hadn't yet said out loud. On the morning of the anniversary, Malik woke up before dawn. He tucked a small, carefully wrapped box into his pocket and spent the whole day nervously pretending everything was normal. Liana, sensing his strange energy but not wanting to pry, busied herself organizing the back shelf of the garage, humming softly under her breath. The air between them felt charged, electric with unspoken feelings. That evening, as the sun dipped low behind the garage's old tin roof, Malik cleared his throat. "Liana," he said, voice rough with nerves. She turned, confused, a rag still in her hand. Malik took a shaky breath, dropped to one knee on the oil-stained floor, and pulled the small box from his pocket. Inside was a simple silver ring, worn smooth from being handled 1,000 times in Malik's hands. Liana gasped, her heart lurching into her throat. Malik looked up at Liana, his hand steady despite the pounding of his heart. "I saw what he never did," Malik said, his voice clear and sure. "I saw the fire in your soul, the strength in your silence, the beauty in your scars. Will you build a life with me? It won't be perfect, but it'll be real." Liana pressed a trembling hand over her mouth, tears already spilling down her cheeks. She dropped the rag she was holding and knelt down on the floor with him, not caring about the grease stains or the dust. "Yes," she whispered, her voice breaking with emotion. "Yes, Malik. 1,000 times yes." Malik slid the simple ring onto her finger, and Liana threw her arms around him, laughing and crying at the same time. For once, all the broken pieces inside her felt like they finally fit. They didn't wait for grand plans or big budgets. Instead, they decided to marry right there in the garage, the place where their second chance had begun. The next few days were a blur of activity. Friends, neighbors, even longtime customers pitched in to help. Someone strung lights across the rafters. Someone else brought folding chairs. A little girl from the neighborhood picked wildflowers and placed them in old oil cans as centerpieces. On the day of the wedding, the tin roof that once echoed only with rain now vibrated with laughter and music. Liana wore a simple white sundress, her hair loose around her shoulders. Malik wore his best button-down shirt, his hands shaking only a little as he waited for her at the makeshift altar made of stacked tires and flower garlands. The whole town had come to witness the love story that had quietly bloomed. Malik's best friend, a retired pastor who often hung around the garage, officiated the ceremony. His voice was thick with emotion as he said, "Love is not about perfection. It's about presence." Malik and Liana exchanged vows they had written themselves, simple promises spoken from hearts that knew pain and chose love anyway. There wasn't a dry eye among the crowd when Malik kissed his bride under the string lights. The celebration was humble, but full of heart. Pies baked by neighbors covered an old workbench. Children raced around between the cars, giggling. Malik and Liana danced their first dance in the middle of the garage, spinning awkwardly but laughing like two kids who had found a secret nobody else knew. There was no fancy cake, no glittering chandeliers, just love, pure and uncomplicated, filling every corner. As the night wore on, Malik and Liana stood outside the garage, watching the stars scatter across the sky. Malik wrapped his arms around her from behind, resting his chin lightly on her shoulder. "Can you believe this is our beginning?" he whispered. Liana smiled, leaning into him. "It's more than I ever dreamed," she said. "Not perfect, but real." Malik kissed her temple and whispered back, "The best kind of real." Their story spread quietly at first, through neighbors, through old friends, then eventually across social media, where someone had shared pictures of their garage wedding. Messages from strangers began to pour in. "You gave me hope," one woman wrote. "You reminded me what real love looks like," said another. Malik and Liana never sought the attention. To them, it was never about being seen by the world. It was about finding each other. In a world obsessed with flashy love stories and picture-perfect weddings, Malik and Liana's love was a quiet rebellion. A story written not in castles or penthouses, but in oil-stained garages under leaky tin roofs. It was about two broken hearts choosing each other, not because they were perfect, but because they were brave enough to believe in second chances. And maybe, just maybe, the world needed more Maliks, more people who loved without judgment, who saw past scars to the soul underneath. Maybe the greatest love stories weren't written with grand gestures, but with small acts of kindness that changed everything. Because at the end of the day, love wasn't about having everything. It was about showing up, staying present, and choosing each other every single day.